Well, good morning and welcome to Hope's Point Baptist Church Midweek Minute. If you remember last week, we started a new little Wednesday study from 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, verses 1 through 10. If you remember the background, and preparing a Father's Day message Sunday before last, presented live at Hope's Point Baptist Church. When I got to the part of my text in Malachi chapter 4, verses 5 and 6, that it talked about, I will send Elijah the prophet before the coming of the great and dreadful day of the Lord, and how we believe based on the wording there and cross-referencing it with other scriptures, particularly in the Old and New Testament, more in the New, that this is a phrase that is identified with the second coming of Jesus Christ. Of course, he came the first time as Savior. He comes the second time as sovereign to execute judgment and to rescue his people, first of all, through the rapture, then execute judgment upon the rebellious world of mankind and the Antichrist, who is exercising power over them. And as I cross-reference that in 2 Thessalonians chapter 2, I began to read and pick up key words and phrases that really identify so well with things that are taking place in our world and specifically in our country at this very time. Now, to speed it along, last week we began with the word deception found in verse 3. Let no man or no one deceive you by any means. And of course, one of the great tactics of the devil and of the Antichrist that it talks about here, coming onto the world scene for power and control, is that of deception. We had talked about the idea of promising something after the removal of something and then not delivering on that promise. I would ask those who believe that socialism is an answer to the needs of our country to just read their history. Go back and I interview the folks that Lenin promised such great things to, and then he comes to power and he not only does not deliver the promises, he becomes a great oppressor of the people. Ask how the people felt about that. And the millions that lost their lives or were interred in prisons who disagreed with it. Ask the people who were promised by Hitler a great new empire and culture. In fact, he wanted to remove law enforcement and then use his brown shirt troopers to go in and to do their intimidation and to even kill people to help bring into power. Ask how they enjoyed what he replaced with. Go to China. Ask those who were promised by Mao Zedong then what has lived out as those people have lived under great oppression all these years. North Korea. Go to modern day Venezuela under Chavez and Maduro and the great things socialism was going to deliver to that once prosperous nation that has literally been destroyed by it. Well, I could go on and on and on, but deception is the first step to our second point, destruction. It says here, let no one deceive you by any means, for that day will not come unless the falling away comes first, and the man of sin revealed, the son of perdition. The son of perdition. That word perdition means destruction. And so to alliterate these points is first deception, and then the goal is destruction. Now, much differently, it's promised. It's kind of like, let's remove law enforcement, replace it with our own. Ask the folks in the 6 block area of CHOP, which stands for Capitol Hill Occupied Protest, how things went there. I just read this morning, they're finally going in and taking control back of that area. But only after there were at least 4 separate shootings, at least 2 teenagers killed and several injured. But most importantly, when the mayor of that town was surprised and shocked that one of the socialist member of the council led a group of protesters to her private residency. It's amazing when it doesn't threaten you how innocent it seems to be, but then all of a sudden threatens you. Even a liberal mayor will say, hey, enough is enough. Funny if it wasn't so tragic. But destruction. I brought that message on Father's Day, not that, but this reference. And ironically, in Chicago, over Father's Day weekend, there were 104 shootings, 14 killed, including 5 minors. Now that's in a supposed gun-free zone. That's under very liberal leftist indoctrination. So deception leads to destruction. In fact, one of the leaders was interviewed the other week of some of this movement out there. So many factions of the movement. I'll not blanket all of it together. But this leader said, if we don't get what we want, then we're going to burn it down. So the goal is never to build up, but to burn down. Not to develop, but to destroy. And if anything is developed, if anything is built in the wake of that destruction, it's under their power and under their control. The son of perdition. Now, this refers, of course, to John 17:12, where Jesus referred to Judas as the son of perdition. In Luke 22, verses 1 through 6, as the Passover neared and they prepared for it, Satan entered into Judas, and we know he went to the enemies of Jesus, betrayed him for 30 pieces of silver. And Matthew 27, verses 1 through 10, he had betrayer's remorse. And when they would not, take back the money they had bribed him with, he threw it on the floor. They took that money, thrown on the floor, and by their law, they could not use it for themselves. So they purchased that potter's field, where eventually we find in Acts chapter 1, verses 16 through 20, where Judas hung himself. And as he hung from the rope, we believe that in context, through decay, through something happening, the rope broke, he lands on the ground, a very gory, graphic scene there, and that he was buried in that field that was known as the field of blood. And we know this is in fulfillment of the prophecy of Jeremiah, of the psalmist, and of Zechariah, to exacting specifications. I wrote a paper in Bible college years ago that kind of took up the theory that the Antichrist in the Great Tribulation period would be a resurrected Judas Iscariot. Now, I'll not go back and review that. I would say he's at least a type in scriptures of the Antichrist. The son of perdition means that there is someone that has spawned them, that brought them. And we believe, of course, their father of lies, Satan, is that ultimate power source. And we know in Revelation 17 that his ultimate destiny is a place of desolation. It is hell. It is the lake of fire. It's referred to as perdition. And we know that's ultimately where it's all going. Now, what's the application very quickly in the closing moments today? In John 2:18, it says, little children, it is the last hour. And as you have heard, the Antichrist is coming. The Antichrist, singular. But even now, there are many Antichrists, plural, that have come, by which we know that it is the last hour. And there are many vestiges, linkings to the Antichrist with Antichrist movements today. I wish I could have pulled the picture up for you, but I was looking at one in which a picture was snapped of a protester in the midst of one of these violent riots, holding up a banner or a poster saying, if Jesus comes back, kill him again, something like that. And I thought the depravity of that, the destructive force of that, it's like we would recognize what Paul said in Ephesians 6. We're not battling against flesh and blood, but principalities and powers, evil darkness, that it's a spiritual battle. Yes, it's played out physically. We see it on our television screen, but at the same time, it's a very intense and invisible war that is really waging between the forces of evil, the forces of good, between Christ and the Antichrist. I'll close in John chapter 10 that I think just really capsulizes this. And next week we will get into this idea as the man of sin found in this. Sin here is lawlessness, and there are several times it refers to him as a lawless one, executing a spirit of lawlessness. Boy, you make sure you tune in for that one. It's amazing. But John chapter 10, verse 7, and Jesus said to them, most assuredly I say to you, I am the door of the sheep. All who ever came before me are thieves and robbers, but the sheep did not hear them. I am the door. If anyone enters by me, he will be saved and will go in and out and find pasture. The thief does not come except to steal, kill, and destroy. But I am come that you might have life, and that more abundantly. So we see a great contrast, a principle, a program, of reality that Jesus is the shepherd, and the adversary is the stealer. He's the thief that takes away by stealth. Jesus is the Savior, but the devil is the slayer. It says he has come to steal, kill, and destroy. I took each of these words, stealing, the looting, the plundering that has taken place in the names of social reform, killing, the number of deaths and injuries by the scores that have occurred during these quote-unquote peaceful demonstration. The idea of destroy. I was just reading in Minneapolis area alone, over 1,500 buildings destroyed. We add to that the vehicles, the historic statues, the churches, and the millions of dollars of damage. Listen, here is laid out in front of us the bottom line to all of it. The thief comes not but to steal, kill, and destroy. But Jesus said, I am come that you might have life, and that more abundantly. And certainly there's a lot of fear out there as a thief is after us. But Jesus is the door that protects us from the destroyer. Put your faith and trust in Jesus Christ today. Live for him. Share him with others. God bless you and have a great rest of the week.